So whenever we implement or look at using frameworks or organizationally driven requirements, it's mostly about selecting and implementing effective security controls or countermeasures. Now, typically, a security control is something designed to make a particular asset or system secure. Now, do you remember the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology? Well, they have a division that's called the Computer Security Division that is actually responsible for issuing out what they refer to as FIPS, or Federal Information Processing Standards. And these standards help us in the classification of the controls themselves. Now, these documents classify different types of security controls by identifying controls as belonging to, there's like 18 families. And I'll show you those here in just a few minutes. Now, each family is assigned a class based on the dominant characteristics of the control included in that family. And the classes that NIST identified are the following three. First, we have technical. This is going to be like firewalls, antivirus software, and operating system access controls. We then have the operational and administrative. Now, this control is implemented primarily by people rather than computers. This would include things like security guards and training programs that help educate our users. So these are more operational controls as opposed to technical controls. And we also have management. Now this control gives oversight of the information systems. This would include things like risk identification or maybe a tool that allows the evaluation and selection of other security controls. Now I mentioned earlier the 18 families of security controls. This is a list of them starting from access control all the way down to program management. If you want more information, I highly suggest that you go look at the NIST site or simply just do a Google search for NIST space FIPS. Remember, that's our Federal Information Process Standards. Now the NIST schema isn't the only way of classifying security controls. In fact, the CSA Plus syllabus actually refers to a broad class. They refer to them as controls, and there are several of them. There's physical, which controls things such as alarms, gateways, or locks that deter access to the physical premise, as well as physical hardware. They also show a logical class, which would include things like operating systems, software, security appliances, ACLs, as well as IDSs. And finally, there's administrative. Now, these controls are actually used to determine or based off the way that people act. So we would include things like policies, procedures, as well as guidance. Now, as far as these controls are concerned, they are classified as a type or a family of controls, and they can also be described according to their goal or function. For example, we could classify them as preventative or compensating. Now, with preventative, the control physically or logically restricts unauthorized access. In compensating, the control does not prevent an attack, but instead restores the function of the system through some other means, such as our backups we've talked about previously. Or in an infrastructure environment, we may look at alternate sites. We also have deterrent. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what is that weird object on his slide? And if you were a vampire slayer like myself, you would know that that's actually garlic. Sorry, it's the only object I could think of to represent deterrent. He's got garlic. So with this type of control, it may or may not be physically or logically preventing access, but psychologically it discourages the attacker from attempting the attack. Now that's very similar to me telling my kids I know everything that they're doing online. I refer to that as administration through intimidation. We then have detective and corrective controls. With detective, the control may not prevent or deter access, but it will help to identify and record any attempts or any successes or failures of an intrusion. With corrective, the control just responds and refixes the incident, so it may also prevent its reoccurrence. In my family, the corrective control is consequences. Yeah, my kids hate that word. I'm still trying to get them to understand that there's not only bad consequences, but really good consequences. But for some reason, they really seem to enjoy those bad ones.